What's up, everybody? It's Sam from STB Sports, and I am back with the weekly NFL Power Rankings this week for Week 15. So you may be wondering why Max and Andrew aren't in this video. Well, we've been having conflicting schedules this week, and then tomorrow, Wednesday, the 16th of December, I get my wisdom teeth out, so I'm not going to be in any of the other videos later in the week. I'm filming another pre-recorded video right after this. It's an NBA video for once, which is kind of new for you guys. But due to that, I'm not going to be in the video later in the week. I'm just going to be behind the scenes helping them out with all the information and stuff. But other than that, that's it for the intro. Let's get right into these rankings. So the 32nd team, none other than the New York Jets. There's nowhere else to put them. They're 0-13, most likely going to go 0-16, I think at least. They had a field goal on that first drive, and I thought maybe the Jets could put up some points. Then they proceeded to get shut out the rest of the game, and the Seahawks scored 40 straight unanswered points. Pretty pathetic. Bad coaching, bad offense, bad defense. They're getting Trevor Lawrence, but poor Sam Darnold, man. There's nothing. I think we all can feel for that man and think, he's not a bad – he's not the problem, but that's what the Jets organization thinks. So let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. 1-12, haven't won a game since week 1. Derrick Henry just ran all over them last week. Over 200 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. They just got destroyed. Once again, the only difference between them and the Jets is that they have a little bit better coaching and then a little bit better offense. But Gardner Minshew is starting next week, so that should be pretty interesting to see. Then we have the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bengals, they just got blown out by the Cowboys. Their offense cannot do anything since the loss of Joe Burrow. It's not really their fault, but they're still a young team. They need to develop their defense a little bit, improve their coaching. Zach Taylor's, in my opinion, I think Max can agree with this. He's going to be happy when I say this, but he's just a subpar coach. We all know how he feels about him. Next up, we got the Los Angeles Chargers. So the Chargers, they actually won this week, but it wasn't enough to move them up. I actually moved them down a slot, actually, just because I think they played pretty pathetically over the last few weeks. Anthony Lynn has absolutely brought that franchise down. He has just been terrible in late game situations. They almost blew it against the Falcons, but thank God they were able to kick that game-winning field goal and win this week. Next, we have the Dallas Cowboys. Their defense played astoundingly well against the Cincinnati Bengals, though the Bengals' offense has been terrible. They scored a touchdown on defense, had a fumble recovery. They looked pretty good, but their offense has been the problem. Ezekiel Elliott, he has just been struggling so much over the last few games. There's not really much else to say. They're waiting to get Dak Prescott back next year, and get their offensive line healthy. They're waiting for next year. Next is the Carolina Panthers. So the Panthers, like the other teams, they've looked pretty pathetic. They are coming off a loss to the Broncos, a game that they probably should have won, in my opinion. But the loss of Christian McCaffrey over the last few weeks has not helped them at all. It did not help my fantasy team. I took a loss because he did not play. So thank you for that, Christian McCaffrey. But done being salty, I have to take my loss like a man. But they have not played good, especially their defense. When the Denver Broncos score 32 points on you, you know you have a problem. Next, we have the Denver Broncos, who move up after a win over the Panthers. So the Broncos have both offensive and defensive problems, as we all know. Drew Lock has looked okay throughout the course of this season when he was healthy, but their defense has seemed pretty subpar overall. They're just not a good team. Next is the Detroit Lions. So the Lions they actually competed with the Packers up until the end of the game. The end of the game last week, losing by a touchdown. Their defense only let up 31 points, which is pretty good for the Lions standards, especially against the Packers. But with that terrible defense, you cannot put them any higher than this. Next up is the Houston Texans. So the Texans are coming off a pathetic loss against the Chicago Bears, a game where their offense only scored 7 points. This is kind of justified because the Bears defense has been pretty good over the course of this season, and they had a lot of injuries to their wide receivers, but this is just it was pathetic seeing Deshaun Watson try to muster up just as much as he could to bring that Texans team to victory. Next, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Eagles came off of the upset of the week against the Saints. Jalen Hurts looked pretty good. He was great rushing the ball last week. And because they won such a big game, they moved up in our rankings, and that game kept them alive in the race to win the NFC East, though it's not very likely to happen. Next, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Yes, the Falcons lost, but they did play pretty well against the Chargers. Late game woes kind of prohibited them from winning, but they have looked fairly decent, especially due to the fact that they have a lot of injuries. Next, we have the San Francisco 49ers. So the 49ers, they have looked okay throughout the course of the season. And then this week they lost to Washington. Their defense has played pretty well overall despite all of the injuries. But this season they're just kind of waiting for the season to be over so they can come back next season healthy with that great defense and be back to being a contender. Next is the Chicago Bears. So the Bears are one of the biggest movers in our power rankings. They have moved up quite a bit after that win over the Texans. Mitch Trubisky, he played better than Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson this week. So that came off with all the memes from the 2018 NFL draft. It was pretty funny to see that. But the Bears played great on offense and defense, 6-7, so they still have a chance to make the playoffs, but it's not very likely considering how they played in the past. The next team is the Las Vegas Raiders. So this has been a team that has had a fairly good record overall, but I just can't really put them higher than 19. Yes, I know they came off a victory from last week, but they just got killed by the Colts this week. They had no shot. They were losing pretty much the entire game. Jonathan Taylor just ran all over them. Because their defense is so bad, it's really hard for them to stay in games unless their offense performs pretty much perfectly. And that's why I have to put the Raiders so low. The Giants, they've played fairly well before this game, but they just got smacked by the Cardinals. They lost 26-7. Their defense they tried their best, but when their offense isn't performing, like I said, pretty much perfectly, they really struggle to stay in games if their defense can't make plays for them. But Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, they looked great against this mediocre Giants team, and this really hurt them, especially because the football team actually won their game and took the lead in the NFC East. Next is the Patriots. So the Patriots are coming off a loss on Thursday Night Football against the Los Angeles Rams. So they lost 24-3. But when you put up 3 points in a game, you have offensive struggles. The Rams defense has been very good, which is why they really couldn't put up too many points, but they need to fix their offensive woes in the offseason and get some receivers and either decide to build around Cam Newton or draft another quarterback. Next, we have the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings are coming off a loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and this really hurt them because it moved them down in the playoff race, and now the Chargers just leapfrogged them to get the 7th seed. So the Vikings, their defense has been pretty bad throughout the course of this season. Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook are pretty much running the show for the Vikings, and when they are not all performing to their best capabilities, they just have trouble winning games, and they really need to improve that defense, especially because Tampa Bay was able to run all over them, pass all over them. If they don't fix that defense, they are not going to make it far in the playoffs or in later seasons. Next is the Washington football team, another one of our biggest movers. They are coming off a solid victory against the San Francisco 49ers. This really put them in the lead in the NFC East, and it's going to really help them make a push for the playoffs. Yes, the Giants' schedule is pretty difficult, as well as the football teams, but they have a stranglehold on that NFC East title, and if they perform well over the next few games, they should be able to retain that first place. Our next team is the Arizona Cardinals, who are coming off a solid victory against the New York Giants. Their defense played very well, especially for a defense that has looked pretty mediocre throughout the course of the year. And their offensive, once again, was firing on all cylinders. They looked great against the Giants, a team that we thought was going to win this game. STB Sports thought was going to win this game. But they really proved us wrong this week, and they are now in that 7th seed wild card spot. The next up is the Miami Dolphins. So they didn't move down too much for us because of the fact that they played so well against the Chiefs. They were winning 10-0 at some point in the game. They forced Patrick Mahomes to throw 3 interceptions this week, which is crazy for how little he makes mistakes like that. Their defense played amazing and pretty much stuck with the Chiefs throughout the entire game, and that was really impressive to see. Next, we have the Tennessee Titans coming off a win against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This bounce back win really pushed them to stay in the top of the AFC South first place spot. Now they are tied with the Indianapolis Colts. Their run game got back to where it should be, with Derrick Henry having a big bounce back game, having over 200 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts. They played very well against the Las Vegas Raiders this week. Their offense was finally back to firing on all cylinders, especially because we did not think we thought the offense was their main issue and their defense was the high point of their team, and they were able to compete against a high-level team, despite the fact that the Raiders' defense is absolutely horrible. But their run game got back to where they should be, and Jonathan Taylor had a huge game for the Colts. Next up is the Cleveland Browns. So that Monday Night Football game against the Ravens was so good. And we finally found out that the Browns are true contenders in the AFC. They competed against one of the best defenses in the NFL in the Baltimore Ravens. Baker Mayfield absolutely lit them up. He only made one mistake throughout the course of the game, and it was pretty much just it was a little bit of a bad decision, but it was also a great play by the defense. Overall, the Browns have just looked great. Their run game was very solid. Their pass game is very good, but their defensive issues on the secondary is what kills this team, and that's why Lamar Jackson was able to throw the ball all over them throughout the course of that game. That was, in my opinion, one of my favorite games to watch all year. Next up, another big mover was the Baltimore Ravens, who looked great against the Browns. One thing that really surprised me about how they played was how many points they let up on defense. 42 for a defense that is supposed to be top 5, 10 in the league is very surprising. But their offense looked great overall. Lamar Jackson was able to run all over the Browns, throw all over them. But one thing that really scares me about them going into the playoffs is their receiver issues in all of the drops they had. They could have sealed that game multiple times, but drops by Hollywood Brown and some of their other receivers, such as Willie Snead, kind of helped them. That really prohibited them from sealing the game a little bit earlier. Next, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off a huge win against the Vikings. This was a must-win game for them, especially knowing that they're needing to make a playoff push. And then with the rest of their season, their schedule is very, very easy. They play the Falcons and the Lions in the next 2 weeks. And with those 2 wins, they should be able to seal their spot in the NFC playoffs. So look out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They might be on the come up. Next, we have the Seattle Seahawks coming off once an easy win against the New York Jets. Nobody really thought the Jets were going to win that game. I actually predicted a shutout. I was very close. The Jets only scored 3 points, but Seattle has looked great. Their offense got back to where it should be after that disappointing game against the Giants, and now they are back up to the 7th spot in the NFL. Next, we have the Los Angeles Rams, the team right above the Seahawks in the NFC West. So the Rams have looked great overall. Their defense is definitely the highlight of the team. Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey anchoring the secondary and the defensive line. There's not really stopping that duo. But they have looked great. Their offense has looked a little bit inconsistent at times, but when Jared Goff and the rest of those receivers are on, they are on. And Cam Akers had a huge game against the Patriots, which was very surprising to me. All right, now we are finally into the top 5. So at the 5th slot, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are coming off 2 straight losses. This week they lost to the Buffalo Bills, and their offense just looks horrible. Their run game is really killing them, and their ability to get third down conversions in short yard situations is really killing them. I've seen so many analysts on ESPN or whatnot say they need to pick up a new halfback, maybe even get Marshawn Lynch in order to fix these problems. But they need to start running about the ball more and have that ground game pick up steam in order for them to do good in the playoffs, or else they're going to be so one-dimensional and easy to stop in the playoffs. Next, we have the New Orleans Saints, who are moving down a slot or 2 because of that loss against the Eagles. So they didn't look bad, but the Saints are just praying and hoping that Drew Brees gets back to full strength so they have a little bit better quarterback than Taysom Hill, who is more of a runner in my opinion. But they just looked pretty one-dimensional. They were pretty much running the ball over and over and over again, and the Eagles were able to capitalize on that one-dimensional ability. Going into the top 3, we have the Buffalo Bills coming off a huge win against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So with that loss with the Miami loss in this win, Buffalo has pretty much sealed the deal in the AFC East. So their offense looked great against Pittsburgh, especially after halftime. They were pretty bad in the first half. I believe only scoring 3-ish points. I don't quite remember. But Josh Allen really picked it up in the end, started hitting his receivers throughout the middle of the field. Stephon Diggs had a huge game, and their defense performed pretty well as well, having that pick 6 to end the half to put them in the lead going into halftime. Next, we have the Green Bay Packers coming off another win against the Detroit Lions. So this wasn't really a marquee victory for them, but a win is a win. the Lions kind of did keep it close overall, but Aaron Rodgers and that offense have just been so good throughout the course of the season, and they just look great overall. Their defense is just good enough to keep them in games and not let teams score too many, but their offense has just been insane, and Aaron Rodgers is in the running for the MVP. And of course, number one, none other than the Kansas City Chiefs. They've looked great overall. They beat a great defensive team in the Miami Dolphins, and they have just looked very, very solid everywhere, all positions. This is definitely the front runner for the Super Bowl. All right, so that is the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and go check out some of our videos from earlier, and then make sure to stay tuned the rest of the week to see some more great content. And we have an NBA video coming out for you NBA fans, so make sure to watch out for that. Make sure to like, subscribe, and have a great day. Peace.